You ever thought about how financial planners get into the business of giving financial advice? If you need to make better wealth decisions and you need to rely on someone to assist you in making better wealth decisions, wouldn't you like to know how that person got their start in the business and what their expertise is and how it is that they're going about doing what they do so that you can feel confident that the decisions you're making are in fact correct? This week, we'll be talking about an academic who's done some research on the topic and who teaches the next generation of financial planners. You won't want to miss it.
This is Make Better Wealth Decisions, a podcast about financial blind spots, decision-making, and how the reality of higher rates, global tensions, and tariff instability impact your investments. I'm your host, John DeGuy, a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto.
My guest this week is Dr. Daniel Richards. He is an associate professor of financial planning at York University, where he teaches personal finance and financial planning. His research actually focuses on financial advice and behavioral finance, meaning that includes exploring topics like ethics and advisor-client relationships and psychological factors in financial decisions. So this is very much key for decision-making. He's a passionate advocate for helping students develop practical financial skills to help them in real-world success. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to talk to you.
You've done a lot of research about a number of things, and I want to talk to you about a couple of them. And I wonder if we could perhaps begin by having you tell us a bit about the research you've done with regard to households and financial decision-making based on whether the household is decisions being made by the man, the woman, or both.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to kind of talk about that. So that's research that we've done on the Canadian households. We basically kind of wanted to look at differences between households depending on who was making most of the long-range financial decisions. So we looked at the difference between households where it's run by both collectively, like both members of the household, or men individually or women individually for the households. And what we're essentially trying to look at is the differences in financial knowledge, but also in financial circumstances of these households. The research essentially was based on gender theory, which often finds that women tend to get less income, and that income has a knock-on effect for financial decision-making. Generally, a lot of the aspects of, financial resilience or financial knowledge or financial capability, those all come a lot easier when income is higher. Okay, so households have more income, they've got more ability to make, wrong decisions and bounce back from them. Or if you have higher income, you're focusing on different kind of parts of financial decision making, such as planning for retirement, etc. But if you're on a low income stream. And so a lot of the research that we found was looking at what effect did this income have on women-led households as opposed to the other groups?
And were there any major findings that you can share with us that you think might be salient?
Well, basically what we found is that, if we think about differences in financial capability, the ability to make, sound, good financial decisions, a lot of those are attributable to income. And differences in gender, differences between men versus women, once we controlled for income, then that difference pretty much disappeared. The gender difference was not that significant at all. What was more significant was the amount of income that the households had coming in.
And that's interesting, because one of the things that I learned as a financial planner and as an advisor is that women in general are more risk averse than men. And the way it was always explained to me was that, well, that's just the natural predisposition of genetics and the way women are and their traditional role in the family. But what you're saying is that it's not necessarily because women and men are different and they're wired differently, but rather because the real explanatory variable is not whether or not you're one sex or the other, it's whether your income is high or low, or somewhere in between.
Yeah. So exactly. So I would say genetics has very little to do with that. It's more about the social situation we find ourselves in. I mean, women tend to get paid less because of, inequality in work. And if you get paid less, you just have a different financial kind of circumstances and decision-making that you're going to be doing that would get paid more. People who get paid more can focus more on, long-term financial decisions, thinking about, what's the best optimization of my investment portfolio. people with lower income may not even have an investment portfolio. So their decision making is more about how do I balance, the money coming in to the money coming out on a daily basis? How do I make sure that, I'm paying off my credit card on time? So the circumstances or the context of is more relevant than gender differences by itself. I would argue 100% against there being a genetic reason for risk aversion. So,
thank you for correcting me. That's good to know. It's funny how you when you think you have an understanding of things, and correlation is not causation. So we agree on the correlation, but the causation was completely wrong from what I had been led to believe. I'd like to ask you about another bit of research that you did last year with regard to people graduating from university and entering the financial planning profession. It's something that's very near and dear to me. I've been an active volunteer in the financial planning community for many, many years.
Yep.
And I certainly want to see financial planning become more of a broadly based, available offering for everyone.
Yeah.
And so what can you tell me about people who are wanting to get into financial planning as a career choice?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bit of a juxtaposition going on here. We've got like these kind of like competing ideas, which doesn't 100% make sense. So it's good to frame it and think about those ideas. First of all, we have an industry of financial planners where they're getting older, and the people working in this industry need succession planning. We need new talent coming in. Then we have graduates who are not really aware of financial planning as like a career outcome. So we need to increase the amount of like people entering this profession. And then thirdly, we have like a society where financial decision making is getting more and more complex, and they have more and more need to get sound financial advice. So those three kind of like areas are all combining to this research project that we were looking at. It was like, how do graduates go from being a person who's, studying at university, studying at college, to becoming a professional financial planner that can have a rewarding career and help the general public?
So my understanding is the main part of the research was the challenging in getting these young graduates to get a foot in the door to start on the career path in the first place. It's all fine and well to get a degree and to have the technical knowledge. But then, in the old days, if you start thinking 50 or so years ago, there were different people that with different firms would go onto college campuses and they would recruit directly. And people would be going directly from getting a degree in a certain specialized field straight into whichever firm offered them a suitable position. It would seem to me, given what you're saying, if I understand correctly, you can see by the color of my hair that I'm one of those people you were referring to who's getting a bit long in the tooth in the industry.
Yeah.
And now we need to find a way to get new blood in to transition them. What exactly has been the problem in getting young people to get a foot in the door in the industry in the first place?
Well, yeah, so that's a very good point. So the main problem is that they don't just want anyone to come into this industry. They want people to come in with experience and knowledge that they can apply. So the idea that you're going to graduate from a degree and then give someone retirement advice age 22, 23 it's just not realistic. So there has to be a controlled career path for people to build up the knowledge so that the next wave of financial planners coming into this industry have that expertise and skills to deliver really high quality financial advice. Now, some of that comes from working at university. Often university education is very, very much focused on the technical parts of financial advice, how to do the crunch the numbers, how to think about, these complex worlds of financial markets and what's going on there. What university education hasn't prepared graduates so well for is that customer service skills, those like face-to-face meetings with clients, the ability to talk to people about finance, because, people can be reserved. We can hold back on our knowledge about or our personal situation about finances, but having those skills to get clients to open up and discuss financial matters with you is a skill that students need to develop more in order to succeed in this career.
And that's not uncommon. I mean, when you start thinking about my wife is a lawyer and she needed to develop some time to develop those skills. And that's what articling is for. And we hear all the time about physicians who are technically brilliant, but have a miserable bedside manner. And that's what internship is for. And so the other professions have a career path that fills the gap that you've just identified, Daniel. So
Mm.
maybe can you offer maybe some specific examples of how something like that might be grafted onto the financial planning community?
Yeah. So the good news is we already have it there, but we just need to formalize it a bit more. We need to let everybody know about it. So that's why I'm on this podcast today. There's two kind of steps in this career path. The first one is like a customer services role. So like university students, even when they're working at university, if they can get some experience working in a customer service role, for example, like a bank teller, or perhaps maybe they're working on a phone situation where they're giving not necessarily financial advice, but they're just talking to people about finances. That is like the first step towards them becoming successful as a financial planner. The issue with getting customer service role, and the hard part that graduates find, is that you don't need to be a graduate from a university or a community college in order to get those roles. So those roles are open to the whole public. So therefore, getting that first foot in the door is hard for graduates. And I talked to one person in this research who said he had 3 job interviews with 3 different people in order to get his first role in a financial institution. So it shows you just that basic first role is difficult. And if there was a better way for graduates to enter those first roles, it would definitely improve the number of people who find financial planning of interest.
Do you think that could be the industry itself not having really matured, or maybe having a bit of a nefarious ulterior motive? So here's what I'm getting at. When you hire someone who does not have a financial planning background, they will not have as much technical expertise, but they will be more therefore inclined to do what the person in the corner office is doing, or simply be molded in a way that the employer wants that person to be molded. So the question that I'm wondering about is the financial services industry hiring for technical expertise, or are they more interested perhaps in people that are smart and malleable, that they can mold to have a certain perspective that might not necessarily be as client-centric as it otherwise might be?
Well, I mean, it's all a bit relative, but I mean, there was some of the people in the interviews talked about how they, were developing a career in financial planning, and some of the people that were working alongside them weren't necessarily from a finance background, they're from a sales background. So there was that element that these large financial institutions are for-profit companies. They tend to make money by promoting their products and getting more people to use their products through the banks. So that's a for-profit aspect of the large financial institutions. In terms of recruiting, I think that what financial institutions tend to do, or they tend to rely on a lot to get those first foots in the door, is it's all about social capital. So it's who you know in that industry rather than kind of like what you know or where you're coming kind of from. So they often rely on informal networks in order to get that first job opportunity, or that kind of like foot in the door, as you mentioned. And that comes from maybe a colleague recommends you to a manager, or maybe you have like a relative who's willing to kind of like put your name forward. And so that's primarily how a lot of graduates getting their first roles in financial institutions, is through that informal kind of network. Good thing and bad thing about that. Good thing is that, it is a way for people to enter. Bad thing is it's not really open. You're not getting diversity. If you were going to refer someone that you know is going to tend to be someone who looks like you, acts like you, goes in the same circles as you, it doesn't tend to be someone from outside of your circle that would be getting access into these financial institutions. So that's the downside of that.
So I think I'm hearing a clear trend here, and I think I know the answer, but I will ask you open-endedly. Then, given the choice between hiring someone who has gone to school to get credentials to become a certified financial planner versus someone who walks in because they know someone, also similarly bright, same age, and assuming the other demographics are essentially identical, what should employers want and why?
Well, I mean, employers should be wanting diversity. So, I mean, financial planning is a relationship type industry. And so having more diverse workforce will lead you to engage more social networks, et cetera, in order to provide financial advice. So diversity should be very, very high. Racial, gender diversity, sexual orientation diversity, all of those should be very high for the financial planning industry going ahead. However, that's not necessarily how it operates. Often people hiring they go to that kind of like their knowns. I know this person, so therefore there's a connection. So therefore I feel good in that decision. Choosing to hire someone like in that situation makes it a lot easier for them. Especially considering if they were, for example, to hire or advertise something, they're going to get hundreds and hundreds of applicants. So it's very hard for them to weed through all of those and head to the familiarity that they have with a personal reference.
So the people listening will hopefully want to work with someone who is qualified. And that person, as we have already discussed, will have some challenges in getting started. Let's assume that person has gotten started. They have started off as a teller or as a junior associate or whatever. Walk us through the career path. How do they then progress from that entry-level position to a more intermediate position to the point where they can be a senior position or start their own firm or do whatever it is they do as a viable, full-blown career?
That's right. So the next position is what we would call an associate financial planner. An associate financial planner is not someone who gives advice directly to the client, but works with financial planners in order for them to leverage their time. So let's assume that you, John, are working as a financial planner. You want to spend as much time as you can with your clients. That's the benefit for them. That's the benefit for you. However, there's a whole lot of back office work that you need to do. And that's where an associate financial planner comes in handy, that they can work with you in order to for you to help your clients. And that is a great career path for our graduates going into this industry, because they might work with you, they might work with other financial planners. They see how other financial planners are operating. They can learn through these financial planners in order to become qualified themselves. So again, it's like you're getting a preview of your job whilst you're still working. And people in those positions, they were very, very aware of this. They found that they're getting a lot of expertise and a lot of benefit from it. And they were really kind of like developing their knowledge and their skills in order to become financial planners afterwards. So that associate job, very, very important. Then after that, we would see that they may work as a financial planner for a large institution, but often people may branch off. Oh, okay, I want to set up my own practice. This is how I want to do it. I want to differentiate myself. This is my focus for my financial advice. And you would see that quite often amongst the advice fee for service advisors, that they wanted to branch off. They wanted to differentiate themselves away from financial institutions. Other financial planners might be very happy working at financial institutions and continuing to have that brand recognition, that kind of support behind them as well.
So then let's go to the other end of the spectrum. And we've got people like myself that are looking to exit the industry, and they need someone to assist them with a succession plan. How might that work? Where we've got someone who has taken an entry position, moved up to be an associate. How does that person then transition to taking over a practice? I've got my dentist is looking to retire in the next 5 or 6 years.
Yes.
He's going to sell his practice, and he will have a succession plan. And so it's not uncommon for professionals to have someone else that will hopefully have worked with them for a number of years, at least 2, but oftentimes 6 or 8. So that they will oftentimes know the clients, their circumstances. How does that succession plan look? And what are the sorts of things that financial planners need to think about in order to operationalize a successful succession?
Well, I think the main thing here is that there needs to be a way for people to kind of like sell off their business. I was talking with a financial planner about this the other day, actually. And I believe, maybe you can correct me if you're wrong, I think there's a little bit of a stigmatism around the idea of a financial planner selling their business to another financial planner. There's almost like a rite of passage that you go out and you find your own clients and you build it up yourself. The idea of a person buying a business and then taking it over maybe kind of comes a little bit like, well, have you really gone the path of a financial planner and developed yourself? I mean, what do you think?
By the way, Daniel, that's the case in every profession. You think a lawyer doesn't want to be very guarded in terms of passing off his or her clients to a young lawyer, or a dentist passing off their patients. Like every profession, if you are diligent and concerned with the welfare of the people you're serving, which hopefully any professional would be doing, will have to be very meticulous in making sure that the person who steps into their shoes as they transition into retirement will look after their clients, not only in a way that is in a true fiduciary sort of doing what's best for the client, but ideally, in my opinion, in a way that there's a certain amount of special sauce, like everyone's got a bias about when to take CPP, or when to split incomes and whether you should contribute to an RSP or a TFSA, and if so, at what income level and so forth. Those are the sorts of things that I find can be deal breakers when the person is, no matter how very, very capable the associate is in moving on to becoming a more senior person, if there's a philosophical disagreement about how to do the planning, that can be an impediment to getting on with the transition when the transition is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so the best way to work that is to be collaborative. So again, working with financial planners, again, like that associate financial planner position, you've got a person who's looking to build a career moving forward. They understand how you work. They know that these are the people that we need to be bringing through to then work for us in the industry. And financial planners, I think, should have a part of their job, and other professions do this, where they get certain KPIs. Performance indicators is bringing in the next generation of financial planners and helping them improve them. So that is the key, is working kind of in partnerships. And I'm from New Zealand. My accent is from New Zealand. We did a bit of research in New Zealand, and they were doing this a lot. If a person came in to see a financial advisor and they got introduced to a client, it wasn't a one-on-one relationship. There was a one-on-two relationship where the one client had two people they could talk to in that financial advising firm. And so those partnerships work very, very well. They work very well for career progression so that people could learn skills, develop. It also worked well for the client because they had two people they could talk to in an office rather than just one. And it also worked well for the business because one thing that kind of happens is if you have a one-on-one relationship, if that financial advisor walks, then the client might walk with them. And so the businesses are very interested in developing this in order to keep the clients with their organization as well. So for succession planning, I would say that type of rolling out that type of workplace model where you have two financial advisors working together would be the way to bridge this gap, the succession gap that exists in financial planning now.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's important because, the podcast is called Make Better Wealth Decisions, and people don't always think about the people who are assisting them in making better wealth decisions and how those people also need to think about their own career path and the decisions they make in their career in order to fulfill their obligations as an advisor to the clients. This has been fascinating. We've got to wrap up, Daniel. I always like to end my discussions with the question about making better wealth decisions. If it was up to you and you could give advice to the people listening at home, what advice would you give them to help them make better wealth decisions?
The key thing about better wealth decisions is essentially you need to be organized. And I say this in a way from an academic, as we've done a lot of research and it's proven time and time again that the process of writing out your finances, the process of building kind of like a plan, the process of, understanding where the money's coming in, where the money's going, being on top of that will help people feel better about their finances. They'll have better financial well-being. So it's a deliberative cognitive process where you have to be actively involved in it in order to get the benefits from it. Often I think people are looking for the easy access. I've got an app that'll fix this problem, etc. My research that I've looked at extensively always says to be kind of like diligently involved with it is the key to making better financial decisions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I want to wish you all the best going forward.
Okay, thank you.
This podcast is not to be construed as offering specific investment advice. Please consult a qualified advisor before acting. My books, Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry and Bullshift, are available online. If you'd like to meet to discuss how the topics in this podcast affect you directly, please visit my website.